Well, we made it. Good evening, everybody. Hey, I see it's working. People are chiming in. Sorry about the malfunction, but for some odd reason, the scheduled podcast just did not go. It's happened twice now. This is the second time it's happened. So, good evening for everybody getting in on tonight. We're a few minutes late, but hey, we're still all here. Episode 134. We talk about Josiah, the king who founded the Book of the Law tonight. And if you would start us out, Dr. Ricks, again.
This story is called 10 Inches. A boy was sitting on a park bench with his hand resting on an open page of the Bible. He was loudly exclaiming, "Praise to God, hallelujah, praise God," and wasn't worried about how it looked in public or not. Shortly after, a man who had just recently completed a university course study, feeling highly enlightened, came over to the boy to see the source of his joy. The boy, in return, said, "Don't you have any idea what God is able to do? He took the people of Israel, millions, right through the Red Sea. And isn't that wonderful?" Well, the enlightened man said, "Young man, let me explain the realities of biblical miracles." He says, "The reality is modern scholarship has concluded that there are parts of the Red Sea, near the edges, where it's only 10 inches deep. All the Israelites did was wade through the water." So the boy is stunned, perplexed, and doesn't know quite what to make. He's stumped. But a few minutes later, he starts praising God again. Wow. The man says, "Well, why are you praising God now?" He says, "Think about it. Not only did God bring the Israelites through the Red Sea in 10 inches of water, but he also drowned the entire Egyptian army in 10 inches, including the horses."
Kid.
One more simple story. This is called Historical Flight. Sunday school teacher asked Kyle and all the children in Sunday school to draw their favorite Bible story. And she came to his paper and she said, "What? You got an airplane with 4 people on it?" And Kyle said, "Yes, it was the flight to Egypt." The teacher said, "Well, I see 4 people. I guess one is Mary, Joseph, and Jesus. Who's the 4th person?" And Kyle said, "Think about it. He's Pontius the Pilate." Well, anyway, it's different. We were just saying that, Josiah is the king who, the last great reformer in Israel and the nation of Judah, and he wanted to go back to worshiping the true God, like David, but the preceding kings, including his own father, had all been into rank paganism, sacrificing children to Molech and all the horrible things that go with rank paganism. And he was turning the nation back. So he raised money to clean up the temple, because the temple had been desecrated with all kinds of pagan paraphernalia and things in it. So they were cleaning up the temple. As most know, they discovered a copy of the Pentateuch. That was the part of the Bible that existed in those days, the core of the Bible, the law, the first 5 books. And I was thinking, this is relevant to us because just like the pagan influence and the world there had pushed the Bible out, isn't that happening to America and Britain today? What do you think, Dave?
Well, I think it's overwhelming. When I was a kid in school, you had the 10 Commandments in the hallways and the classrooms, and now you cannot have it in a courtroom and or anywhere. And any mention of the Bible gets you in a ton of trouble. A lot of big companies, they're not allowed to mention anything about the Bible because you get in trouble with HR. The world is turning dark, and the light, which is the Word of God, which is the Bible, um, we're educated about through the Bible, that's being removed. There are a lot of motel chains are not having Bibles in their rooms anymore. There's some militant homosexual organizations that are removing them or demanding that they're removed. And I know I read a story about one who is all their people are cutting certain pages out. So if you open the Bible, those pages aren't there anymore. But other religions, it seems to be just fine. If you want to talk about Islam, which a lot of our kids are being taught about in school now, or you want to talk about just pretty much anything else is okay, but anything Judeo-Christians being walked all over.
You know, I knew we were in California. It was a trip many years ago. Most motels back then, they'd always have the Gideon Bible in the drawer. Went to California, and they had some book to do with um, Buddhism. I knew we were in California. Like you say, anything but the Bible. Now, of course, those California values are spreading all over the country. No Bible anywhere. They don't mind. Even saw a TV show. We only watched a few minutes of it. I forgot the name of it, but they're really. I understand what they were doing, and it's not all bad, but they wouldn't have done this for Christians. What they did was they had a nice-looking lady, and at one point she was dressed, very Western, attractive, and she had a tire problem. And a lot of people would stop to help her. Then they had her wrap up in a hijab with part of her face covered in a hood and everything over it. Same situation, and at least for a while. Now some people did stop. For a while, hardly anybody stopped. And they went on a real tirade about Americans have to get over being homophobic, and she shouldn't be pressured to have to give up her job. Western society should. And while I'm not saying we should mistreat Islamic women, I nothing of that nature. But I thought to myself, would they have made a show like that regarding any prejudice against Christians, Jews, or Bible believers? I bet they wouldn't dare have made a show like that.
I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and he was, I don't know, he was getting a cup of coffee or something at the post office. I don't know. He was somewhere out. And while he was waiting in line, a Muslim couple came in, and he said he got a knot in his stomach. He says, but for a second he thought, why do they hate me? And they thought, well, are they going to do something violent in here? And he said then he became angry because 15, 20 years ago he would never have paid it any mind. But now he has a certain fear that something bad could happen because they're there. And they've brought that upon themselves. This guy has no religious affiliation of any kind, and he never knew anything about it. He says, but now every time he turns the TV on, that's all it is. In France, in wherever, Tunisia, whatever, there's something going on. And now that he looks back through history, the Beirut and the airplane, and it's always somehow associated with this religion. Yet, if you say something bad about it, they look upon you like you're a problem. And I don't understand how disliking a thought process is racism.
Mm-hmm. And getting back to the Bible, it's like you're saying, there's no activity to ban the Quran from the public square, or any other holy book from any other religion except the Bible. I would say in general that's true.
My kids come into class and they tell me that that they have to memorize the 5 pillars or this sort of thing. But if you had to memorize one scripture from the Bible, there'd be an uproar.
But they had to memorize the 5 pillars of
Islam.
Yeah. I think they've done that around here too. I believe they have, and some people complained about it. And my point is, but the Bible, and then going to 2 Chronicles 34:14. Just want to read a few verses here to get the picture of what was going on. 2 Chronicles 34:14. And when they were bringing out the money which had been brought to the house of Jehovah, Hilkiah the priest found the book of the law which Jehovah had given to Moses. In verse 19, it came about when the king heard the words of the law, he tore his clothes. Now, the point of, and you can read all the scriptures in between, is what they read when they opened the Bible and started reading it, they realized just how far off the mark they had gone. And what he found was surprising. That tells me even a good king who wanted to do the right thing, the knowledge of the Bible was lost, or a good chunk of it, of let's say the worship of the true God was lost. Because when he heard it, he and the high priest and some of those other top priests were shocked, like, oh, I didn't realize.
And maybe the Holy Spirit pricked their heart that they were open to hear this and to look at things honestly. You know, these are things that suddenly it made perfect sense, and they had not known them, and how maybe ashamed they were that they did not know, or how maybe it was they were so happy to have finally found them. There's just so much emotion that could go into that.
You know, that is so true, and we I really believe that the temple had been desecrated by pagans, and from other verses in this and in 2 Kings, we know that they had the phallic symbol material from Astarte in the temple, and all kinds of other temple relics, and even little houses. You know, they have little houses around the temple for certain counseling and work. They had turned those into houses of prostitution for male and female temple prostitutes, which is part of the sex revelry paganism of the pagan gods. It's that kind of thing. And of course, the king started a process of clearing all that out. Well, when the pagans were in charge, led by a number of kings, including Josiah's own parents and grandparents, they no doubt desecrated the temple with rough pagan treatment and probably destroyed every copy of the law and the Bible they could find. That's why copies available.
Years ago, I believe we were at the Feast of Tabernacles, and I think my wife was working her little tail off, getting ready for people to come over or something. And I was just watching the History Channel, and they had a program about the history of all the different sexual whatever that were associated with religious, either religions or religious leaders. And they mentioned all over the world, the Asian countries, the Indian, the South America, all these places. They did not mention Moses, Abraham, Jesus Christ, the Apostle Paul. They did not mention any of them of having any of these strange sexual rituals. None of them, but they mentioned, just tons and tons of others where this is part of what they consider worship, not found in the Bible.
And that is a big part of paganism, is the temple prostitution and and a lot, at least some of the paganism was the fertility goddess, who was the consort of all the other pagan gods like Molech and Baal, and there's a whole wide range of them. I think some of them are the same. They just, in different languages, they had different names, or at least they were close to each other. And that's part of it. Like, you might ask yourself, what do Easter eggs have to do with the resurrection of Christ? Well, we all know, and if any of our who are listening to this program don't know, go to the Garner Ted Armstrong Evangelistic Association website or the ICG Church website. Scroll down there. You can get booklets alphabetically or by topic, and you can find booklets that will explain. But we all know why the Easter eggs are part of it, don't we? Where that came from.
You know, it's interesting. A couple of years back, several years ago, I was working, and a Muslim television reporter from, I think, Monaco came up to me, and he just wanted to talk to me. He was a very nice guy, and he was talking about the different conservative people. He liked the conservative people.
Mhm.
And I don't know how it came about, but he said, this guy Cortez was a bad guy. And I said, how so? He said, Our Lady of Guadalupe. He says, that's the same statue as Mary. He painted her black, gave her a new name. It's the same thing in South America. And I thought, I never really thought about it, but he's right. And it seems like, the pyramids, I've seen the pyramids in the Yucatan.
Mhm.
They're just like they are in Egypt. They sun god things, or they show up all these places. It seems like where Christ said, there is my way and there is another. The other can take any kind of name it wants, but it kind of comes back around to being the same thing.
Yeah, and paganism has many similarities, and it's a powerful force that kept dragging Israel down. And one of the things that I think we need to mention is that Bible IQ among the general public has been declining. 2 generations ago, most people went to church. Most people were Protestants, went to some church that preached the Bible a little bit, some more than others, but they believed in the Bible. Most presidents, if you go back a few decades ago, liberally quoted the Bible for what they wanted. Maybe Lincoln's most famous quote about a house divided against itself. Of course, that's straight out of Matthew. And a lot of people, or even when Reagan talked about a shining city on a hill, that's straight out of the Bible. Of course, that's Jerusalem. The point is that you're not going to hear those things so much anymore because people don't know the Bible anymore.
Well,
No.
right.
You
They
know,
don't
I'm
understand.
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just, they have, it's funny, they have on Facebook, they have what's your Bible knowledge, and they ask you about 10 or 15 questions. And most of the people on my Facebook page are in the church, and every single one of the church members gets Bible scholar or whatever like a perfect score is. And you see the test, you're like, it might be a little. It's all the easiest stuff in the world to us. It's nothing. And there's also something interesting on something about there's a Bible challenge where they get different churches and something. That guy, he's a comedian. He does it. It's a game show.
I used to watch that. They changed the choir, and then we lost interest in the program. But I know the show you mean.
Yeah. And it's the questions. You wonder, but I think just about anybody in a church, just people sitting in a church are gonna ace most every question they throw out there. It's rare that someone that you miss it, but it's amazing how much and some of it's so easy, and you think everybody knows these answers, and you're yelling at the TV. And the nuns, they had a group of nuns one day. They were blanking on half of them. Come on, you're nuns. You don't know this stuff.
They know their traditions. The reason you're not going to hear our politicians quote the Bible is a long time ago, even back to Reagan, people they would relate to hearing those scriptures. They would relate, I've heard that in church. Nobody's heard it before today. They're not going to relate to it. So you might as well be speaking some kind of Martian language because they're going, what's he talking about? They don't relate to it, where people my age and older are much more likely to relate to it. But we're getting to be fewer and fewer of us. So.
Yes.
Yeah, and you know what? I think the most recent example was, a week or two ago. Someone said 2 Corinthians instead of 2 Corinthians. Someone who says 2 Corinthians obviously doesn't know the Bible. They had it handed to them, and they're reading it flat. They have no idea.
Yes. We're not telling you to vote for. That's the world we live in now, right? I bet you a lot of people I bet you half the public might make the same mistake.
Yep.
When you think about the Bible and losing Bible knowledge and losing God's way, the Bible had a warning. I want to read one of the warnings, Deuteronomy 28:12, just for us to think about it. Deuteronomy 28:12 says, Jehovah will open for you his goodness, his storehouse, and the heavens will give rain to your land in due season, and to blessing all of the work of your hand, You shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow. Now, I'm just thinking, I want to look at the rain and dew season. The translation may vary a little bit more, but what have we been experiencing for the last year and a half, or somewhere like that? We've been we've had too much rain in the southeast and the Midwest. The town I'm living in is on the Mississippi River, so it has floods, every spring. But for this early in the year, we're not in spring yet. About 2 weeks ago, we broke the all-time record for the Mississippi River, and I believe St. Louis broke it as well. Um, but other places, similar things have happened, but yet in California and I guess in other places out west, isn't it the greatest drought they've had in over half a century, if not the greatest.
Yeah, I think the drought actually ended here recently, but and at least where John lives when he was mentioning it. But yeah, you're right. It was the longest drought. I mean, everything was dried up.
Yeah, and nothing is what it's supposed to be. Then there's disease coming. I've never heard of a Zika virus before, and they're saying now a lot of the um, I don't know the word to use. The people moving into Europe are bringing, the diseases that we know about, normal things, but they're bringing stuff that's particular to other lands that they don't know how to treat. The further we get away from God, the more the cursings will increase. It's really simple. I can say I don't believe in botulism, but if I eat some chicken that's been left out, I'll find out that, believing it or not, you're not going to feel very well in a few hours. God puts things out there. If you do it right, there's blessings. If you do it wrong, there's cursings. And you can try to paint it any way you want, but God will not be mocked.
And I really believe this. For the most part, if you look at American history in the general sense, America has been blessed with the best agricultural lands, and most of the time with reasonable weather. As a matter of fact, if you study American agricultural history, the biggest problem they usually had was too much. By that I mean surplus corn, surplus wheat, sometimes surplus cotton, and a couple other crops. And the farmers would be complaining the prices are too low. I mean, now there are plenty of places in the world where they starve to death every so often. So now you compare that with America's problem of too much. Well, that's been the past. Have you gotten the impression that as we've gotten further and further away from the Bible, God is taking our blessings away? Even when California got its rain, it got the rain too fast all at once. I saw this picture, I think it was on TV, of these really expensive condos on a cliff right over the Pacific Ocean, and the mud had rushed all the gradual land away, and they were like hanging off a cliff. You step out your back door and you drop straight in the ocean like 100 feet. And I believe they're evacuating those condos, which are expensive, because they think a little more mud, the whole thing could come down the ocean. Now, after all those, over a year, 2/3 of a year of drought, and then you finally get rain and it starts to wash away here.
When we came to this country, we had never seen the blessings that this country in and of itself had. Buffalo, like you cannot imagine, just millions of them. Go out west, start digging in the ground, and you got crude oil, you got gold. God just blessed us, and we have forgotten that. We are not thankful anymore. It's like
You're absolutely right. We're not thankful for anything we have, and we expect more. I mean, the mere fact that someone like a Bernie Sanders can get up there and get the following he has in a country that has so much opportunity, or at least had more, had much more before, that he can get so much traction with his message of take, and give it to he's taking the talents from the ones who have 10 and giving it to the ones who won't earn the one. He's doing everything backwards to what God would do. And the mere fact that he gets this much traction tells you where our nation has become a bunch of whining ungrateful people,
I've
ungodly, ungrateful.
got two things. A fellow told me today he read a poll that said 40% in Iowa, 40% of the Democrats relate or identify as socialist in Iowa.
Wow.
And that's what someone told me, and I tend to believe this guy. He's a sharp guy. And the mentality of these people is like the guy that came up to me years ago with a gas can, and he said, my car ran out of gas. Can you get me some gas money? I said, how far do you have to go? And it was just a couple miles, so I gave him $1. He goes, that's all you can do? And I said, I'll take it back. And, oh, I'm sorry. No. Because that's the best you can do. Yeah, you know what? I thought, what an ingrate. He was in this little tiny car, a little Festiva or something. At least that's what he said. And he only needed to go a couple miles down the road. And back then, gas was $1.40 a gallon. So, there's $1. It'll get you where you got to go. There wasn't a thank you. It was what? That's all you got?
As bad as it is now, and as bad as it was in Josiah's days, he managed to turn it around.
I'm thinking that this homeless guy that got me for the $1 was suffering from affluenza.
Affluenza.
He was not as affluent as he wanted to be.
I was going to read verse 19 and 20 among them. Now we switched into the curses. And it says, Jehovah will send upon you curses and confusion and rebuke all of you undertake to do until you are destroyed and until you perish quickly on account of the evil of your deeds because you have forsaken or forgotten me. Now I was thinking, confusion. Doesn't it seem like everything they do in Washington, they're confused, it doesn't work, it's like we're in a state of confusion and people say, well, the government just doesn't work. Nothing they do is working.
You know what? People ain't. If you're politically driven, you may not like this comment, but it's like it's like they're not doing it wrong when all their socialism and they're taking from one. They're not doing it wrong. They're just not doing enough of it. Let me do some more of this and it'll work. Let me do more of it and it'll work. Let me steal more money from these people and give it to these people and do more of the stuff that's not working, but it'll eventually work. And that's where they think that's what they think they need to do.
In God's law, it says do not steal. Now, I realize they call it taxation and income redistribution, but the principle behind it is stealing.
You're robbing a bank is income redistribution. If you put a gun in a guy's back and steal his wallet, that's income redistribution.
Yeah, but something sounds so nice. The rich will pay for it. That never works, by the way. Countries that have tried it, it doesn't work.
Look at Walmart.
Yeah, they're done. $15 an hour, 150 store closed. Now, those people wish they would have rather had their 11 or whatever they were making, or 10 or whatever, and have a job, and then making 15 and not have a job.
And they're closing the
don't have any hours. It's useless.
Closing the stores in the neighborhoods where they need work more than any, because that's where they have more shoplifting and less skilled labor, and so those are the stores they're closing. So you went out and
inner city stores, yes, sir.
Yeah. You went out and fought to make sure you don't have a job. And I told somebody the other day, and I said, well, don't you think that'll help? And I said, well, no, if I had a hamburger stand and I had to pay you $100 an hour, well, now my hamburger is $600 an hour, or $600, and I'll fire everybody else, and you still have to make all those hamburgers that we sell. But you're going to do it all by yourself. There's not anybody frying the patty and somebody else dressing the bun and somebody else putting in the bag. You better hustle, hustle, hustle. You will do $100 an hour worth of work.
Yeah, it's killing the. See, what this is also doing something. People don't understand what's going to happen next. It's killing the labor market for young people. 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and even up into their early 20s. Cannot get a job because if you got to pay someone a high enough wage, And some people fear we're going to get to a $15 national wage, not to. People are planning for it. A $15 an hour minimum wage, these people cannot get a job. You're not going to hire someone for $15 an hour who's 16 years old when you can get someone who's, 60 or retiring, or someone with more with more experience because they're out of work. People don't understand economics, and just like the guy that I was talking about earlier running, he has no idea of economics. It's the Keynesian economics, which is proven failure, and the Soviet Union's economics, which is a proven failure. They collapsed. And the only way China got to where they were is because they're using crony capitalism, which is where we're going. Now they're finding out that's not working. Crony capitalism is not going to work for us either. We're going to fall into the same trap.
And in a generation, those kids will not have had a first job. They've not learned how to smile at the public, not deal with somebody being upset that they did something wrong. And so they won't have your basic skills in dealing with the public and dealing with other people. Because when I was a kid, got my first job, I made a mistake. They came down on me. Buddy, you did this wrong. You got to fix it. And you learn how to take correction. And our kids aren't being taught that anymore. And this is going to just going down the wrong road. Everything you do that walks away from the Word of God will come back to the same response: you're doomed. Every single time.
Yep, and we're losing Bible and Bible principles, and we're cursing. Here's another curse in Deuteronomy 43 and 44.
Let me get it here for you real quick.
In Deuteronomy 28:43 says,
Deuteronomy 28:43.
The alien who is among you shall rise higher and higher above you. You shall come down lower and lower. He shall lend to you, but you shall not lend to him. He shall be the head, you shall be the tail. I know of at least one town near us where the major plant in that town is owned by foreigners who kind of sleep upstairs, and the Americans are the low-end workers. Another town that my son used to live in, the two biggest employers were both foreigners. I guess I won't mention which country, so not to embarrass anybody, but one of them, they said they treated American workers. Now, this is the word that the workers used. They treated American workers like slaves. They were not that nice to them, and all the office. In other words, we're indebted. I mean, parts of our economy are indebted to foreigners, and they're running stuff. And most Americans are totally oblivious to our foreign debt.
Yeah, they've been taught all their lives that it doesn't mean anything. We're not really in any trouble. It's not really a debt. Well, I got news for them. They're going to be the ones paying it here pretty soon.
And frankly, back to Deuteronomy 28, take some time and read the rest of that chapter. It really ends poorly for those who walk away from Christ.
Yeah, worse things are coming. I think that we're already suffering. Now, I realize we do have some good weather, and there are some blessings in America. Be sure I say that. But we're starting to lose some of the weather blessings, and we're starting to get more and more in debt. You know, if you go back to World War I, well, and even before that, between America and Britain, they were the lenders of the world, the capitalist leaders of the world, for the most part. You needed money and capital. America was the place to go. More countries owed us, even anyway, but all that has slowly been changing.
You know, somebody told me, I think I saw it on the news, they were interviewing someone, and they said that when the Middle Eastern countries that we had to invade heard the United States Marines were coming, those people were quaking in their sandals, I guess I should say, and they were afraid, and now they have no fear of us. And if you go back to Deuteronomy 28, that's addressed in there, verse 9, I think it is. And
that's one where one of you will chase away a whole bunch of the enemy,
It says, the Lord will establish you his holy people, as he promised you an oath, if you keep the commandments of the Lord, your God, and walk in all of his ways. And the people of the earth will see that you are called by the name of the Lord, and they will fear you. But we don't walk in his ways, and they're not afraid of us anymore. That's what the pagans did everything they could to destroy the Bible. And when Josiah found that, his ways were now made open and known, and we could then turn, Josiah could then turn the people back to learning the ways of God. And when that happened, the blessings would come. They don't want us, and that's what's happening today. They don't want us to know the blessings and the promises of God and the ways of God, because the blessings and promises will be made for us. And Satan is using these people to take that knowledge from us, so that we will then start doing things the wrong way, and the cursings will come upon us, and our nation will suffer, and our children and grandchildren will.
Not that it's a major thing, but you look at American history, there are a number of times when America was militarily outnumbered, but somehow the fear of America, maybe in other things too, America had surprising victories in the Indian Wars, and the Mexican-American War. They're outnumbered. And one that most people don't, it's interesting, when the Japanese fleet, which had a lot of carriers and well-trained combat pilots, and America only had a few carriers and only 2 in the Pacific and no combat-trained pilots because we hadn't been in combat, when they got to Pearl Harbor, the admiral got nervous and afraid. I mean, the Japanese admiral. He didn't send in his second and third waves as they had planned on it. They didn't knock out the ship repair stage. They didn't knock out the fuel docks. If they had kept it up, they might have stayed long enough to sink the 2 American carriers that were coming into port, the Enterprise. In other words, the attack actually, now that they can review it, it was actually a victory for America. It was a PR victory for America. And the things that they destroyed were older battleships, which really weren't that valuable. I'm not trying to make light of the men that died. I don't mean to take it that way. But from the standpoint of the things that mattered, fear of America actually worked to America's advantage at Pearl Harbor. And hardly anybody knows that. It's one of those secrets of the war. And America just got blessed, I guess is the best way to put it.
You know, I read somewhere, and I'm doing this off my memory, but apparently in the last few years they found under one of the sunken American ships had actually fallen on top of a Japanese sub and sank that sub that we didn't even know was there. They recently found that.
How's that for luck?
I don't know.
I don't know how lucky you are, but if you're going to go, take them with you.
Yeah, that's right.
As a kid, I say, if you push me off a cliff, I'm hanging on to you. You know?
Imagine how shocked the guys in the Japanese sub were.
Yeah.
It's just amazing how lucky America got in the first year of the Pacific War. You probably heard the story before. Both Admiral Doolittle's raid, all the planes got through, and the Japanese were confused as to which way they were coming, and even though they went all different ways, it just worked out in that respect. And it made the Japanese go to Midway, where that fleet came from, and they went with a big fleet of carriers, sort of easily won. And I won't go through all the details of the story, but in 5 minutes, by pure luck and God's blessing, 15 dive bombers sunk 3 Japanese carriers because they were changing bombs on deck because they had found where the carriers were. And the whole Pacific War changed in a few minutes. Just pure luck. The Japanese were so stunned by that defeat, the leaders of the Japanese Navy didn't even tell all members of their government for years. They were just stunned. And the whole war changed. It was all, Japan was on a defensive. Now, America's not getting those kind of blessings anymore. Or I don't think we're going to get those kind of blessings anymore.
No.
Go back
another quick thing about World War II. We were producing equipment so fast. In 1939, we were producing about 3,000 airplanes, aircraft for the military. By the end of World War II, we had produced 300,000. So our production went up. I don't know how many fold that is, but unbelievable. But 1,000-fold in 5 years. So and they were, and if we first got into the war, we weren't that experienced, and they were shooting them down very fast. But we were putting them in the air faster than they could shoot them down. We were building them too fast for them. And so the one statement on this site is that the World War II was won as much in the machine shops as it was by our military, because we were producing equipment so fast. We ramped up so fast, converted all of our production over so fast. It's unbelievable how much we could produce when we needed to. We couldn't do that today.
And when you consider end of World War II, when Israel was trying to be put together, they assembled planes from miscellaneous parts of other planes. So one plane going up may have had 2, 3, 4 different planes parts on it. Their test flight for American pilots who were Jewish blood, the test flight was when they flew that plane into battle, and all of them worked. And you go back to George Washington and read all of the battles that he fought, where there was no way he could have survived. And we not only defeated the greatest nation, greatest military, greatest navy in the world, we established the greatest country in the world. All blessings from God. And our kids are not taught that anymore.
Yeah,
and I think the reason we're mentioning all this is to try and draw a parallel with Josiah and Israel and what they went through and how they were made low and how they managed to come back. And how he brought them back and how he had the will and the people had the will once he got a hold of them, and how today we just don't have the will. It just seems to be gone. No matter what you see or hear, there's a few, but I just don't think the numbers are big enough anymore.
Nobody wants to hear it.
Here's a thought. Now, in Josiah's day, what actually happened was a prophetess named Huldah. It's a lady. She was the only one, I guess, that was righteous enough among the priesthood that God contacted. So when, after he repented, the king asked her, the high priests were involved, but they asked her, what message from God? God's message was really a bit disappointing. God's message basically was that Josiah was a good man, and he could slow down the decline, but the people were so perverted that he could not stop the decline. And so when he died, it would go back the way it was before, and God was going to let them go into captivity. In other words, all Josiah could do was slow down the decline. And I want to ask this question. Do you think it's possible that the best we can hope for in America right now is to slow down our decline, maybe move back a little bit, but we can't turn the momentum back to where America's a more, at least a reasonably Bible-believing, godly nation?
I don't know if that. I think that's the only hope. If we think that would be, I guess what we think doesn't matter, obviously. But if it's in God's plan, obviously. But I don't know. I think the pull of the world and the pull of Satan is just so much on this nation. It's just, I don't think we can turn it, and I don't think we can slow it. I think we're at its mercy.
We have people with respectable jobs that have tattooed their neck. They have grommets in their ears. We have mommy and daddy with holes that big in their earlobes. I don't know what to say to that.
I used to hire people, and I was pretty discriminating on all that kind of, external stuff. Customers, and this was, back especially in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s maybe. You don't have any employees if you don't take them. Because it's so. I have this girl was cutting my hair and she had tattoos all over her arm or whatever, and I said, "You do," and she's talking about how she was a rebel or something when she was younger or whatever. I said, "You know what? You are the norm now. It's people like me with no tattoos, nothing hanging off of us, no holes we weren't born with. We're the rebels. You're the norm." And she was messed up because she thought about it. You know what? You're right. I said, "You're the regular people now. We're the freaks. You're putting on a mark on me."
I heard someone
She had to think about that. She's like, everybody she knows is like that. Well, guess what? You're the norm.
Yeah, I heard somebody say I wanted to show my uniqueness, and I said I could line up 200 people your age, and you're going to show me how you're unique. What makes you special? You got a tattoo. Every single one has the same one.
And by the way, Israel was so messed up that Josiah not only had to clean out the temple, when you read 2 Chronicles 35, he had to put the Ark of the Covenant back into the Holy of Holies, reorganize the Levitical priesthood. I assume they had been disbanded and discouraged. They had gone pretty much all pagan. He had to get things back together. That's how bad things had become. And I just think it's interesting when you think about Israel at that level. And you know, we wrote down that maybe, and this is strictly a maybe kind of thing, maybe if America elects better politicians, that's what what's the famous Protestant preacher was complaining about? His name will come to me in a minute. The one from North Carolina that's so famous, Billy Graham. Apparently, Billy Graham was on several Christian talk shows complaining. He says, "Now wait a minute, Franklin, right? Franklin Graham and Billy Graham both. But his son Franklin was doing most of the traveling speaking. But his dad agrees. They were saying, wait a minute, Planned Parenthood has been caught harvesting baby parts and other horrible things and killing babies in such a way as to maximize organs they're going to sell. Not only can we not get politicians to cut off government funding, that's bad enough, but now they're prosecuting the people who found out all the evil stuff they were doing." I'm thinking, wait a minute, there's something wrong with our prosecutors, the politicians, and the public. That
Here's something I saw the other day, and they're being punished for telling the truth, by the way. I saw someone the other day, and he said, imagine living in a country where if you tell the truth, you'll be punished. The FBI was investigating an 80-something-year-old lady. They went to her door with a search warrant that they wrote for themselves. She opened the door, and she's in her 80s, and she says, "Who the hell are you, and what do you want?" They gave her the warrant. She looked at it, and her assistant was about 70, and she said, "What is this?" They arrested her because she shared information. When they they arrested the assistant because the assistant accepted this information, because you're not allowed to tell that they've investigated you. When they got to court, the FBI withdrew their case. Otherwise, a judge could have said this was unconstitutional, and they would have had law, case law. But can you imagine? You can't not say that somebody knocked on your door, and that's where we are. They're in trouble for telling the truth. You know, it says, "All who seek to do good shall become prey."
Yeah, the truth is falling in the streets for sure.
Yes, it has.
yeah.
And again, that's why the Bible was destroyed and Josiah found it, because it's the truth. It's not new. There's nothing new under the heavens. Satan does not want the truth known.
No, the truth convicts them. The truth, like the Planned Parenthood videos, the truth is convicting. They keep saying they're heavily edited. Well, they can't show you one portion that's edited, because the only thing was edited was for time. They cut it here, showing you that cut because it had most of the content. There is no edit, no cut, no swap, no insertion. You can see the full videos online from end to end, unedited, and they will not be able. That won't hold up in court for one because they can't. It's not even a. I think it's just. It's not a jury trial. It's just something. It's more for show. I think. I don't think it'll go anywhere.
Legal harassment. But the problem with legal harassment is it's not the crime, it's the process. If during the legal process they make any mistake, then they could literally be prosecuted. Not for the crime, but for some mistake during the legal process. It's a form of legal intimidation. Plus, you have to spend a lot of legal money as well.
Plus, they stop anybody else from thinking of doing the same thing. And
that is evil. But that is, and I was looking at Deuteronomy 30. Well, we probably ought to go to 2 Kings 22:19. That might be the one that we really ought to look at the most. 2 Kings 22:19 and 20. As we get ready to close, 22:19. And this is, I think, the really good thing you can say for Josiah. Because your heart was tender and you humbled yourself before the Lord, or Jehovah, when you heard what I spoke against this place and against its inhabitants, that they would become a desolation and a curse, you tore your clothes, you wept before me. And he goes on basically say that the nation will be blessed as long as Josiah is alive. He was able to turn back things. He actually either killed and or run a lot of the pagan priests out of the country, or killed them. It's not quite clear, both there and in Samaria. But he literally cleaned up Israel, and even the northern parts from the previous Samaria that did exist, some were still left. He destroyed even the graves of the pagan priests, and Israel was blessed because of what he did. And my thought is, we need to be more like Josiah, regardless of how things are going to end. Israel was blessed at least for probably 25 or so years. They got blessings because of his leadership. You could say he even delayed the spiraling down of Judah. And I said in the paper, if ministers in churches were just to preach the Bible as best they understood it, not all the deep insights that we might have, but just the stuff that's clearly written, and they started preaching sin is sin, and our politicians started doing the right thing, could we slow down the decline of America? And I guess, Ken, you're saying you think we've gone too far, right?
Well, I don't know. I do think we've gone. My feeling is, my gut says there's not enough people in the country that want to turn it around. It's not like Nineveh, where everybody wanted, the people wanted to turn it around. Do I got the right one? Where they actually prayed, they fasted, they wanted to do that. This country has no interest in that. This country has no interest, I don't think. It only has interest in self-interest and nothing to do with God. They don't want it mentioned. They're embarrassed by it, and I don't see enough. I don't think we're getting to the point, maybe not as extreme as Babylon, but where we start at 50, end up at 5. I mean, I know there's a lot more than that, but or Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm sorry, there's a lot more than that, but it's getting pretty thin.
The majority.
I don't know it's getting pretty thin.
Yeah. I was thinking about next week. We were going to talk about an anti-hero, Haman, and of course Mordecai and Esther. And I was thinking the reason that Haman is important is because, and we might put this on the title of next week's program, might help people think about it more. Why the rise of anti-Semitism? Why the rise of anti-Semitism? Boy, the more you start reading about that, you realize it's not, normally you think anti-Semitism is because you're different. I mean, that may explain it sometimes, occasionally. But when you look at it, it's really a lot more than that. Why anti-Semitism and Haman and Mordecai, Mordecai and Haman. Haman's the bad guy. And I want to just mention, and maybe we could put that in the title can and people will find it, but I think you're going to be surprised. And, it's not just being different. It's, well, what can I say? I think you'll be really surprised when you realize why the rise of anti-Semitism.
All right, we can do that. I think we did a good job of putting a link between Josiah's time and the kingdom at that time and where we're at today. So I think that's a good. I think we did a fairly decent job of getting that link in today. So we know what we're at. We know what we're gonna kind of what to expect. So. And you know what? All the stuff that went wrong, we still got this out. Sometimes I just think that the program it just really isn't wanted to go out there, but we still managed to get it out. Sometimes I wonder. I know it sounds silly, but you never know because everything was just set up just right, and it just wasn't going. So I don't know. Maybe something to it, maybe not. Another thing. If anybody wants to help out, spread the word. Share the link to these programs. Share the link to the channel to people that that are in your life that you may want to try and get involved or wake them up or spread the word. Just if they can stand listening to us for a few minutes, maybe they'll pick up on some of it and it'll sink in. And that's one way to help. Years ago, people used to take the magazines and go around and get extras sent to their house, and they drop them at doctors' offices and different things like that. That doesn't get done so much anymore, but if you can do that, share links, send it, spread it, tweet it, Facebook it, Google it, whatever you want to do with it. But if you want to try and get it out there, that'd be great. So, again, thanks. Have we covered this? Is there anything else we want to say before we sign off?
We've covered most of the important stuff, I think. I was going to throw Deuteronomy 30:19 in there. Said,
oh, yeah, we can certainly do that.
Choose which way you're going to go. Are you going to go toward blessing or toward cursing? And,
Deuteronomy 30:19?
Yes. And I think that probably people in God's church want to go toward blessing. But too much of the world just doesn't care enough. And as Moses said, I call a witness against you this day. Actually, what Moses had at one point, there was a little valley between them, and he had certain tribes on one side of the valley, and others on the other side, and they were singing curses, blessings, cursings, blessings. And Moses kind of made a real artwork out of it, so the Israelites would remember certain things will get you cursed, and others will get you blessed. And it does appear we're moving more in the curses line and less of the blessings line. Unless we have a great biblical, even worldly spiritual revival. But nobody thinks that. I remember when Glenn Beck said that, and I think it was 210 or 211, that America was going to have a great spiritual revival. Well, I mean, I'm not saying he wasn't sincere in his belief. It just didn't happen. The majority of Americans weren't that excited about the Bible, spiritual revival, or anything like that.
The Bible says we will after we got to go through a whole bunch of trials. So it eventually is going to happen, and there's going to be plenty of people that do, that are converted, but they've got to go through an awful lot to get there.
Yeah, we can't do it the easy way, right?
No, that'd be too easy. You can listen to your parents and your grandparents because they've been through it, and they've been through it, and they've done it, and they fell, they got up, or you can fall and get up yourself, and we tend to choose to fall and get up ourselves rather than listen to them and find out where all the potholes are so we don't go through that.
That's so true. God knows we don't where the potholes are, but we want to do our own thing.
Absolutely. All right, have we come to the end yet, gentlemen?
They're pretty
All
much
right.
program, actually, to turn
Yeah.
out.
Despite everything that all the glitches we had, I guess. So hopefully next week everything goes much smoother, and I'd like to thank everyone for showing up and staying with us. Like I said, share the program if you like. If you're just starting out and you're just starting out in God's Word and learning things, stay with it. Study, pick something, learn it. Go through the website, the Intercontinental Church of God website. Look at our I posted the link last week. Look at our correspondence course. Stay on it. Don't let yourself drift. If you've been in a church for a while, don't let yourself drift off and let the pull of the world drag you back out to sea, because it's real hard to get back in when you do that. So I'd like to say thanks again to everybody, and good night. And maybe this one last thing I can get, and it'll go smooth.
And remember, anti-Semitism, why? You're real surprised, everybody, why anti-Semitism is on the rise.
We're happy you could make it. So glad you are here, and hope that we've been able to make God's Word more clear. Until next time, may God be with you in everything you try. But for now, till next week, we have to say goodbye.